Bare necessity, but simple bare necessity. Bare necessity, but simple bare necessity.
Hey there, it's Freebird and welcome to today's video where we are going to be going over my statistics. If you don't know, I usually do have a spreadsheet. Last year I did not get to post my stats video where I went through my spreadsheet and all the charts it makes because I messed it up. I don't know if I just copied it too many times and the formulas were getting funky. But I made a brand new spreadsheet this year, so there's bound to be some errors, but it should give us at least a good idea. Before we go through my spreadsheet, let's go to my Goodreads challenge page and see my year in books. I did find as I was adding in some things from my spreadsheet that I was missing some books on my Goodreads, so hopefully this is accurate and hopefully my spreadsheet is accurate, but let's be real, they're probably not. 2023, my year in books. I will show you guys on the screen, I guess. Well, I don't know how I'll put it, but you guys will see what I'm seeing. Pages read according to Goodreads is 29,452. I want to look at last year's. Oh wow! So I read like 13,000 more pages. And books read, I read 117 books total. I thought I had read less than that because of the fact that I was missing a couple, so exciting. I've never broken 100 books before, so that's even more exciting. The shortest book I read was In Mercy Reign by Shauna Maguire. It's a short story that goes with the Wayward Children collection. The longest book I read was The Lies of Lochlanmora by Scotland, which is 752 pages. And worth every page. My average book length actually is 251 pages, which is interesting. I would have thought it would be a little closer to 300, but it also does make sense because I did read a lot of graphic novels and manga. My most shelved book, or like the most popular book that I read basically, is The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien, and the least shelved is the Marvel Tsum Tsum Takeover, which I'm not surprised by, and that is on 44 different shelves. My average rating for 2023 was a 4.1. Highest rated on Goodreads should be next, and that is Your Lie in April Volume 11, which is not surprising because as the last book in a series of 11 volumes, it's gonna end up being highly rated because anybody that makes it all the way to the end of a series is most likely to love it. So now it's time to go to my spreadsheet and take a look at what we've got. So I try to organize things so that when I'm looking at it, so the blue colors will be things I read this year, and then the pink side is things that I acquired throughout the course of the year so that I can compare the two when there's overlap. Author history is where we're starting. Of the books that I read this year, 64 of them were books from authors that I read from before. That can be an author that I read from earlier that year as well for the first time. So once I read Lies of Lochlanmora, I've read from that author before. So when I read Red Seas Under Red Skies, it counted as acquainted rather than first impression. 60% of authors that I've read from and 40% new to me, which I'm pretty happy with. However, the interesting balance to that is that my author history for acquisitions is not the same. The first impressions is 60% and the acquainted is 40%. Books that I borrowed author history wise for were first impressions, and the other 23 that I borrowed were acquainted. Keep in mind though that I have been working on series for manga that I did borrow. Status wise, this is referring to books that I've read for the first time versus reread. 6% rereads. So let's take a look at target audience. Of the books that I read, only 1 kids book, 3 kids chapter books, 5 middle grade books, which I'm actually surprised by. I don't remember more than 1. Next we have young adult, 51%. Adult I read at almost 40%. I acquired 60% of the acquisitions were adult books, which means that I really should focus on that shift as my interest in what I want to purchase and what I'm willing to put my money into switches, I should also switch more of what I choose to pick up, and not just pick what's going to be faster to read, but pick what I'm going to get the most enjoyment out of, which I feel like is part of why I sometimes lean on YA, is like, oh, I can get through that quicker than an adult book that takes a little bit more time to get through. So that's something to consider, and that is partially reflected in how much I read this year. Seeing that percentage of YA be higher, and this whole section of YA middle grade and kids being bigger than the adult reflects, like, that tracks. 33% of the books that I acquired were young adult, whereas 60% were adult. Speculative versus realism. This I'm excited to see. Considering how I felt like I was reading nothing speculative the majority of the year, I'm not mad at this. Almost 60% realism and 40% speculative. I can live with that. While I would like it to be a more perfectly even split or so, I can live with that. And then over on the acquisitions side of things, 50-50. Videos. So this is regarding books that I read with the intention of putting in a video, or that I filmed reading and still have the intention of posting the video for. Videos that have a solo vlog that is just for that book or series. 25% of the books that I read content related are in those. Almost 40% of the books that I read that were content related books were in a vlog that was either themed or was a that was a themed vlog, which makes sense because I did do those 2-month-long projects of the April Showers, May Flowers thing, so that tracks. And then event vlogs, 34.9%, which also tracks. Owned or acquired. So this is only for books I read this year, and it's talking about books that I acquired during the course of the year, whether borrowed or purchased, and books that I already had on my shelves. I would like for this to be a bit better. I would like to focus on my already owned books and get through some of those titles so that I have room on my shelves. Condition. So this is only books that I read physically or in combination to physical, meaning I read some of it with my eyeballs on a physical book and listened to some of it on an audiobook. So those are the only things that are on here, are either those or ones that I only read with my eyeballs in a physical book. 76% of them were new books, and 23% were used books, which is not bad considering I do own a lot of new books because I buy a lot of books on sale. But I do need to consider that if I'm not picking up the books that I'm getting used, I need to consider, why am I picking them up? Am I picking them up for a content idea or for myself? Physical versus digital information. Entirely physically, 52% of my books. Much lower because I split off that both section, and I started doing that where I actually use the audiobook to help me get through when I'm having a harder time in a book and I'm enjoying the story but I'm having a hard time focusing. Format. I'm usually very physical book reading centered, so anytime that I see a lot more than just physical, I'm very proud of myself because I don't want to neglect all of the digital books that I acquire or have acquired in the past and have not gotten around to because I forget they exist. Because I can't see it, it's the object permanence. So 49% physical, combination as 15, 8 audio, which is pretty good considering I this year and last year really neglected audiobooks. So that's progress. 3 ebooks, which is again not bad. 30 e-graphic novels or manga, which makes sense. Versus the acquisition side of things, physical was 80%. So clearly we have a bit of a balance issue there. This acquired format one does not show borrowed, where the format read does. So if I read it and it's an e-graphic novel or digital manga copy that I read, I could have borrowed that. Ebooks 13, which is not bad actually. I've been trying to do better about ebooks because I think last year I went a little ham because I'm subscribed to this email thing called BookBub, and they send you all these things, and I tried to only get books that I already heard of instead of just getting anything that sounds interesting and is only like $2. I don't need to get it just because it sounds interesting. Audiobooks 18. A lot of those, I'm not gonna lie, I purchased them after having done the combination thing. So of those 18, some of those are this 15. Down here we have the borrowed format. 88% e-graphic novels and mangas. And then we have only one audio that I borrowed. That doesn't track. You know what? I didn't list the borrowed formats for any ones that I did in combination. That's the problem. So this is like one audiobook that I borrowed and only listened to, as opposed to audiobooks that I borrowed to combo with. So I need to fix that for next year. Books that are in a series versus books that are in a standalone, which is pretty evenly split, and I'm actually quite happy with that. Readathons and book clubs and group reads versus what I didn't read for readathons, book clubs, and group reads. This is not 100% accurate because I did not add a category for Murphy's Discord, which is kind of like buddy reads. That is nuts, because I really genuinely would have thought that the majority would have been not during a readathon or for a book club. Literally Dead Book Club, 10%. Graphics-a-thon, 16%. Rom-com-a-thon, I read 7. I only participated in the first round of rom-com-a-thon this year. I didn't realize there was going to be a second round. And then 15 books, 30%. Almost of my readathon and book club reads were specifically the Mid-Year Scramble, and a whopping 19, or 34% of my reads, were for the Amazing Readathon. Number of pages, this is only for books that I read. The largest section is between 200 and 300. 30 of the books fit in that category. The smallest section is the 600 to 699. I think that the version of Loch Lamora that was on the Goodreads page had a different number of pages, even though I thought I went through and selected my specific edition. Maybe I didn't. So the Loch Lamora was less pages in my edition, and the Red Seas Into Red Skies edition was the longer book. So then the one that is here for the wait, how did I manage that? That's wrong. It's supposed to be, I think the way that I entered it in the formula is correct, but on the chart it's wrong. I'm gonna have to fix that. It's supposed to be 500 to 599. Is one, that would be Loch Lamora, and then the highest one would have been Red Seas and Red Skies. And then next we have publication year. Anything from 1850 to 1899 would be one book. 1900 to 1949, probably one as well. And then we had actually a surprising 3 books from 1950 to 1979. I'm not sure what the other 2 were, but I know one of those was Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Next, moving up, we had 11 between 1979 and 1999. I know for sure some of those are One Piece. I know Stephen King is in there. I'm not sure what else. To 9 that were between 2000 and 2009. The majority of those 9 are probably The Pretty Little Liars. And then we have from 2010 to 2014, 17 books. And then from there, I went ahead and split it into individual years. So 2015, I had 2 books, 2 from 2016 and 1 from 2017. Then it starts to get higher. Like the 2016 era, I was reading, but like after that, I was like really starting to get into BookTube and like the BookTernet. And so then I acquired more books and I started making more TBRs, and I started like, as I started making bookish content is when this started to shift. So you can see that in these numbers, which is really interesting. Because like in 2016, I wasn't really making bookish content, but in 2018, I was. 11 from 2018, 9 from 2019, 7 from 2020, which is actually surprisingly low from what I would have expected compared to like pre-2020. 2021, 9, which is not bad. And a lot of these are like me catching up with new releases that I didn't get around to during that year. 2022, 11, which is pretty good. Me again trying to catch up on new releases. And 2023, I read 13, which is pretty solid. Not all of the books that I acquired that are 2023 releases, but it's still not bad considering all of those would have to be physical reads because usually the audiobook doesn't come out right away. So, not bad. Now we're gonna look at books by month. So which months did I read the most in? I am shocked. I am shocked. I was expecting April and May to be the highest months. And while April is the second highest, May isn't even close. August. August is the biggest month. I read 20 books in August. Oh my lord, I didn't even think about that, but it makes sense at the Amazing Readathon, but still. And then April, the second highest with 18, which makes sense because it's my birthday month. It's spring. As you can see here, I have my biggest surges in spring and in the end of summer / fall. Usually fall is a little bit better than it was this year. But May, I'm surprised with how low May was. June checks out with the summer. July is high, but again, we had the mid-year scramble. You can see where I had events. I had either projects, so projects and events tend to get me reading more. This says books by month on it, but it's actually books by quarter. So my heaviest quarter of reading was actually quarter 3, which is interesting because that's summer months. Ratings, generalized and micro. I'm not gonna go into the micro this time because I didn't go through and mark them. In general, I really had a good reading year, and 47% were in the 5-star range and 31 in the 4-star range and 14 in the 3-star range. So 6 plus 2. Only 8% of the books that I read were actively disliked and like a problem book. Like I had no enjoyment in reading. Books that I acquired. 74% of the books are still unread, which means I have a lot of reading to do. 20% I did get to, which is good, and I did have 6% of those are books that I already had read, and it was either a duplicate copy of a book, or I read it like from the library and then purchased it, or I read it as a kid and now I'm purchasing it. Is it great? No. Do I think it's possibly a better looking pie than it was last year? Maybe. But regardless, I do know that I purchased fewer books. So even if this pie percentage is not super improved, I did improve in some of my purchasing. So I am going to call that progress. And then we do have that same chart for the digital and the physical separated, just to see the comparison of the two. Of the digital acquisitions, I read almost 50% of everything I acquired digitally, and 15% is previously read or like a dupe copy. Over half of the books that I acquired digitally, I read. I am so proud of that because digital books I went so bad on last year because of BookBub, and this year such an improvement. Physical books, I do think that we need to take into consideration. I want to look at how many of those books that I did acquire that are physical are used, because used books, I do tend to end up having a lot of used books that I purchased specifically for video ideas that I just haven't gotten to yet, which would be a factor. So that's it. That's my statistics. So hopefully I did a little bit better of filming this round, and editing Brie doesn't hate me, because these videos are not the funnest to edit. Because I'm kind of boring just looking at my computer and talking about numbers, I feel like, so it's hard to make it interesting, and also I get rambly, and yeah. So hopefully this video isn't as rambly as it was to make, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. Yeah, I enjoy seeing my numbers and comparing that to what I would like to do, and just having those numbers to explore my reading and observe things about myself. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your day or night, whatever time it is for you. Make sure you hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so that you can become part of the Bear Scouts, and so that you'll know when I post, but more importantly, so I can see you again very soon. Peace out, Bear Scouts.
Look for the bare necessities, the simple bare necessities. Forget about your worries and your stress. I mean it, bare necessities. That's why a bear can rest at ease with just the bare necessities of life. Yeah, with just the bare necessities of life.